You've been told you are what you think. But thought without action is just noise. Ideas without structure are just sparks in the dark, and motivation without follow-through. That's the reason most people stay stuck, looking inspired, but going nowhere. The truth is simple, and no one wants to say it. You don't become what you dream. You don't become what you wish. You become what you discipline. Not in moments of greatness, but in the repetition. No one applauds. In the promises you keep when no one's watching. In the quiet daily decision to show up without needing to feel like it. Most people wait for discipline to feel natural, but the ones who rise, they install it until it becomes identity. And if there's a voice in you right now whispering, "I could be more," that's not imagination. That's memory of the person you were always meant to become. And the only way to meet them is through discipline. You become what you discipline. There is a moment in every life when the mirror gets loud, not because of what you see, but because of what you've ignored. The habits, the patterns, the compromises made quietly, day after day in the name of comfort. And in that moment, if you're honest, you hear a truth no one else will say to you out loud. You're not stuck. You're just undisciplined, not lazy, not unlucky, just unwilling to train the parts of you that want it easy. And the world, it will let you slide. Because the world loves average. It feeds on it. But there's a cost. And the cost is everything you could have been. If only you decided to become what you discipline. Discipline is not punishment. It's the highest form of self-respect. It's what separates men who talk from men who transform. It's the edge, the separator, the multiplier. And the ones who understand this, they move differently. They speak with less noise, but more weight. They walk into the world already shaped by the fire of repetition, of silence, of systems no one sees, but everyone feels. Because discipline doesn't announce itself, it proves itself. You want to build something, then start by building yourself or self, not in hype, not in hope, but in hard, boring, consistent execution. And here's the truth. You already know what to do. You just haven't trained yourself to do it long enough without needing to feel good. That's where discipline lives, in the gap between knowing and doing. It's the bridge, and most never cross it, because they confuse motivation with momentum. And motivation, it's a liar. Motivation asks how you feel. Discipline doesn't care. Discipline shows up when it's raining, when it's dull, when it's late, when it's lonely. It doesn't need a mood. It lives on standards, and your standards, they're not what you hope for. They're what you settle for. So ask yourself, what have you been settling for? Not publicly, privately, when the camera's off, when no one's checking in, when the goals are no longer shiny. That's where discipline is tested, not in the highlight reels, but in the repetitions. Nobody claps for. You become what you discipline, not what you wish for, not what you write down on January 1st, not what you say when you're fired up after a podcast. Your life is a reflection of your rituals, and your rituals, they're sacred contracts with your future. You want to become something great? Then you better be willing to train like it, not occasionally, but relentlessly. And yes, that means boredom. Yes, that means doing the same thing until it's no longer exciting, because excitement fades, but identity sticks. That's what this is about. Not habits, not hacks, but identity. Shift through deliberate discipline. You can't meditate your way to mastery. You can't journal your way to a legacy. At some point, you have to act your way into alignment. And that action, it must be structured, it must be repeatable, and it must hold even when life tries to break it. Most people's discipline has conditions. They'll show up if the schedule's clear, if they slept well, if the mood hits. But the elite, they show up because it's Tuesday, because it's time, because they said they would. And that's the difference. Not talent, not resources, standards, So what are yours? Because every time you lower them, you train your mind that your word can't be trusted. And trust me, there is no success without self-trust. You can't lead a business if you can't lead yourself. You can't inspire a team if you can't follow your own plan. You can't build wealth if you keep betraying your own structure every time life feels heavy. Discipline is how you love yourself in the long term. Not with comfort, with structure, with boundaries, with systems that make success inevitable even when motivation dies, which it will. And when it dies, most people stop. But the ones who've built discipline, they don't stop. They don't even flinch because they're not driven by dopamine. They're driven by direction. You want to be that kind of person? Then track everything. Not to obsess, but to align. Because if you don't track your behavior, your brain will write a story to protect your ego. But numbers don't lie. Data doesn't care how you felt. If it's not in the tracker, it didn't happen. You don't get to guess your way to greatness. You systemize it. You schedule it. You execute it. When you feel like quitting, and when you do that long enough, discipline becomes identity. And once that happens, the game is different, because now it's no longer, should I show up? It's, of course I'm showing up. This is who I am. That's the shift. That's the goal. Not discipline as a task, but discipline as truth. You become what you discipline. If you train chaos, you become scattered. If you train avoidance, you become fearful. If you train weakness, you become dependent on feeling good to perform well. But if you train consistency, you become unshakable. If you train integrity, you become trustworthy. If you train follow-through, you become someone who builds things that last. So stop asking, how do I feel? And start asking, what does the disciplined version of me do next? Then do that again, and again, and again, until it's automatic. If what you just heard made you nod in agreement, please like and share with someone who needs a ray of light today. The world isn't suffering from a lack of talent. It's drowning in a lack of discipline. Scroll through any feed and you'll find millions of people with potential. But potential means nothing if it's never converted into evidence. You can't deposit ambition. You can't scale, almost. You either produce or you pretend there is no in-between. And the reason most never crosses that threshold isn't because they can't. It's because they never built the internal infrastructure to hold greatness. They want the outcome without the operating system. But here's the truth. Your outer world will never rise above the discipline of your inner world. You don't become consistent by wanting it. You become consistent by becoming the kind of person who doesn't negotiate with what needs to be done. Discipline doesn't ask, "Do I feel like it today?" Discipline says we don't leave this room until it's done. And that kind of discipline. It's not just about goals. It's about becoming dangerous to your old identity. Becoming someone so relentless, so intentional, so structurally sound, that your old excuses can't even find a place to live anymore. You think high performers are superhuman. They're not. They've just eliminated the luxury of negotiating with laziness. They've installed discipline as a core value, not as a mood, but as a non-negotiable operating law. They don't rely on willpower. They rely on systems because systems survive when emotions crash. So, what systems are you running? What routines do you protect? Because if you don't control your schedule, someone else will. If you don't define your structure, the world will define it for you. And if your life is unstructured, so are your results. Don't envy the man with freedom. Study his calendar, because if he has freedom, it's only because he once had discipline. Freedom is not the absence of structure. It is the reward of it. You don't rise by removing constraints. You rise by choosing the right constraints, the ones that force your greatness to wake up, the ones that make quitting harder than showing up. And when your life is built on discipline, you stop needing motivation. You stop chasing inspiration. You start trusting routine as your religion. That's when your mindset changes. From I need to be motivated to I move because that's who I am. It's not glamorous, it's not viral, but it's real. And in a world addicted to shortcuts, discipline becomes your competitive advantage. While others chase hacks, you compound consistency. While others need external accountability, you run on internal standards. While others flex for approval, you're stacking silent wins, the kind that don't show up on the feed but show up in your future. And here's the secret. Discipline isn't restrictive. It's liberating. It frees your mind from indecision. It frees your energy from distraction. It frees your future from regret. Because regret doesn't come from trying and failing. Regret comes from knowing exactly what you should have done and realizing you trained yourself to ignore it. Every day you choose comfort over commitment. You cast a vote for a weaker version of yourself. But every time you act, especially when you don't feel like it, you cast a vote for your future. And eventually, those votes become identity. You become what you discipline. That's not a metaphor. It's neurological. It's chemical. It's repetition turned reality. Your brain wires itself based on what you repeat. So if you repeat, chaos becomes automatic. If you repeat procrastination, avoidance becomes your home. But if you repeat structure, clarity becomes easy. Focus becomes natural. Confidence becomes your baseline. Not because you feel good, but because you have proof. And proof is louder than doubt. This is how you reverse the spiral, not by talking to yourself in the mirror, but by stacking days of discipline so ruthlessly that the old you simply cannot survive anymore. You don't break the cycle with breakthroughs. You break the cycle with routines. You don't escape the chaos with one big win. You starve it with structure, with standards, with systems that force the version of you you've been dreaming about to become real. Look around. The most respected people in the world aren't loud. They're structured. And structure is silent power. The power to say no, the power to stay steady when others unravel. The power to lead not with emotion, but with example. So if you want power, don't chase applause. Chase discipline. If you want transformation, don't chase new. Chase consistent. And if you want to become someone that even your past self wouldn't recognize, don't wait for a feeling. Move because you decided, this is who I am now. And when the world asks what changed, you won't need to say a word. They'll feel it. They'll see it in how you carry yourself, in how you don't need attention to stay committed, in how your life becomes so aligned that excuses bounce off you like water. Because that's what discipline builds armor, not to protect your ego, but to protect your standards, so that when the storm comes, and it will, you don't get tossed around. You remain. You execute. You continue. Because this is who you are now, it starts to happen quietly. One day you wake up and the voice in your head isn't asking, "Can I skip this today?" It's saying, "We don't miss." It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's just locked in. Because discipline, when practiced long enough, doesn't need hype. It becomes habitual certainty. It's the moment when you stop chasing identity and start living it. You don't try to be focused. You just are. You don't negotiate with your calendar. It's already sacred. You don't wait to feel motivated. You've rewired yourself to move anyway. That's when the game changes. Because now discipline isn't what you do. It's who you are. And when that happens, the external world begins to respond. Not because you're seeking validation, but because results are magnetic. The body changes, the business grows, the chaos fades. Not because you got lucky, but because you stopped leaving your future up to chance. That's the power of discipline. It compounds silently. While everyone else is waiting for a spark, you're stacking momentum in the shadows. And by the time they notice it's too late, you're already gone mentally, ahead, emotionally stronger, structurally unshakable. Understand this. The highest form of confidence isn't found in words. It's built in your relationship with follow-through. When you do what you said you'd do, especially when no one's watching, especially when it's hard, especially when your mind says just this once, skip it, that's when you begin to believe yourself again. Most people never experience that kind of belief because most people are fluent in breaking promises to themselves. They hit snooze and say tomorrow, they skip one day and call it grace. They justify weakness and label it balances, and slowly their self-trust erodes. Not because they're bad people, but because they never learned that discipline is the root of everything they want. You want clarity? Practice discipline. You want peace? Practice discipline. You want to stop second-guessing yourself? Practice discipline, because it teaches you day by day that your mind can be trained, your habits can be forged, and your life can be rebuilt. Not overnight, not in a weekend retreat, but through deliberate daily construction. Discipline is how you tell the universe, I am no longer available for the version of me who only moves when it's easy. It's how you say I am becoming undeniable, not in theory, but in rhythm. Rhythm, that's the real secret. Most people chase intensity, but intensity without rhythm is a spark. It flashes, it fades, but rhythm builds empires. Rhythm writes books. Rhythm builds businesses. Rhythm transforms bodies. Rhythm reshapes identities. And rhythm is born from discipline. Not just one day of greatness, but 1,000 ordinary days stacked with precision. While others glamorize the breakthrough, you'll build the foundation, quietly, relentlessly, without skipping. And when your rhythm is deep enough, it becomes automatic. You don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. So make sure those systems are sacred. This is where most people fall off. They confuse consistency with constraint. They say, I just need freedom. I need balance. But discipline is freedom. Because when your non-negotiables are clear, your distractions lose their grip. When your rituals are locked in, your emotions don't get a vote. When your calendar is committed, your doubt has nowhere to hide. That's freedom. To build without begging. To rise without noise. To show up calm, collected, committed, while everyone else is still trying to find their motivation. Playlist. Discipline is what makes you lethal. Because once you've trained yourself to move regardless of how you feel, you become unpredictable to your enemies and reliable to your future. You can't be manipulated by weakness. You can't be seduced by distraction. You don't flinch when the pressure hits you. Tighten your structure. That's what it means to be dangerous in a world that's soft. Not because you're angry, but because you're anchored. Not because you're aggressive, but because you are unshakably aligned. So here's the challenge. Audit your life. Not your dreams, your disciplines, because your disciplines will expose everything. Where you spend your time, how you handle boredom, how you speak to yourself when no one's listening. Whether your calendar is filled with intention or avoidance. Are your actions a reflection of your highest identity, or are they convenience dressed up as effort? You already know the answer, but now it's time to act on it? No more romanticizing potential. No more hoping that one day you'll feel ready. You don't rise by waiting. You rise by training. Training your mind to obey your mission. Training your body to move when it's tired. Training your words to reflect. Alignment. Training your life to function with or without motivation. Because when you are disciplined, you don't chase emotions. You command them. You don't wait for permission. You build with precision. And here's the shift most never make. They build discipline around their goals. But the elite, they build identity around discipline. They don't ask what to do. They ask what kind of person would do this every single day. Then they become that person. Not in theory, in reps, in structure. In execution without applause, without shortcuts, without asking for a break. They don't need hacks. They don't need hype. They need only one thing: discipline deep enough to become a new reality. What do you think of this part? Feel free to leave a comment below. I read it all and appreciate every single line. Hit like if you're ready to move forward with me. There's a moment in the life of every disciplined person when something clicks. Not outside, inside a shift, where they stop performing discipline and become it. Where it's no longer about checking boxes or crossing off to-do lists. It's about living in integrity. Total internal alignment. Every thought, every move, every word built around one unshakable truth. I do what I said I would do. Not because it's trendy, not because it feels good, but because it's who I am now. That kind of identity is rare, because most people are still looking for shortcuts. They want to be successful without structure. They want peace without process. They want purpose without the pain of discipline. But here's what they don't understand. Discipline is peace. Discipline is purpose. Discipline is how you stop fighting yourself. It silences the noise. It eliminates the guilt. It removes the endless loop of "I'll start again Monday." Because there are no more resets. There is only repetition. And in that repetition, something sacred happens. Gratitude emerges. Not the kind you post on Thanksgiving. The kind you feel in your chest when you realize, I didn't break today, I didn't skip, I didn't betray myself, and I showed up. And that's a kind of joy most people will never taste because they've never had enough discipline to build it. They chase happiness in entertainment, in distractions, in dopamine. But happiness built on emotion dies with emotion. Happiness built on discipline, that's fortress joy. It doesn't fade. It fortifies you. Gratitude born of discipline is different. It's not reactive. It's earned. You're not grateful because life is easy. You're grateful because you've earned your rhythm. You've earned the clarity. You've earned the energy. You've earned the peace of knowing that when the storm comes, and it always does, you will not fold because you've trained for it. You've built the armor. You've stayed consistent when no one was watching. And now, the world watches wondering how you stay so steady. But they don't see the reps. They don't see the quiet. They don't see the early mornings, the locked-in routines, the little choices stacked on top of each other like bricks. They just see the fortress, and they call it discipline. But to you, it's simply identity. And when you reach that level, there's no more arguing with yourself. There's no more hype required. You don't need reminders. You don't need motivation. You don't need to convince yourself anymore because your system removes the need for convincing. You don't wonder what to do. You already decided. The moment you installed discipline as your backbone, you eliminated the debate. You became efficient. You became lethal. You became free. Yes, discipline creates freedom. Not later now. Because when your systems run deeper than your emotions, you reclaim your time. You reclaim your mind. You reclaim the version of you that was always there, buried under the weight of compromise. You become light. You become clear. You become capable of carrying more than most people even dream of because you've trained for it. And your mind knows it. Your spirit knows it. That's why your energy shifts. That's why people notice something in you and can't explain it. They feel the difference because discipline radiates. It doesn't scream. It doesn't boast. It simply moves, in silence, in rhythm, in truth. And as it moves, everything it touches is sharpened. Your business, your relationships, your body, your habits, your presence, your decisions. They all start to orbit around a center that no longer wobbles. That is the power of unshakable internal structure. That is the power of becoming what you discipline. So stop looking for the hack. Stop chasing the next method. Stop jumping from plan to plan, waiting for something to finally click. You are the click. You are the system. You are the strategy. You are the structure that saves you not someday, but now. When you rise in discipline, the world doesn't just open up. It gets out of your way. Because now your life doesn't bend to chance. It bends to choose. And the greatest choice you'll ever make is to trade what's easy for what's true. To trade how you feel for who you want to be. To trade waiting for walking, and to keep walking long after the mood has left, because that is the discipline most never touch. The kind that outlives resistance. The kind that rewires identity. The kind that makes everything possible. So here you are, at the threshold between two lives. One ruled by feelings, the other ruled by focus. One built on goals, the other on standards. One driven by emotion, the other by execution. Only one of them will last. Only one of them will carry you, and only one of them can become you. This is it, the place where most people stop, right on the edge of something real. Because the voices get loud here. The voice that says, "You've done enough." The voice that whispers one skip won't matter. The voice that tempts you back into comfort, back into convenience, back into that soft seat of inconsistency. But you're not most people anymore, because most people spend their whole lives dancing around discipline. You stepped into it. You didn't come this far to dabble. You didn't come this far to almost become the person you were meant to be. You came here to become unrecognizable to the version of you who needed to feel good just to move. And now, you don't need permission. You are the permission. That's what happens when discipline becomes your foundation. The noise dies, the fog clears, and you start to operate from truth, not trends. You stop asking, "How do I get back on track?" Because there is no track. You are the track. You've laid it brick by brick, built it with reps, poured the cement with your sweat, and now you walk it steady, grounded certain, because the man or woman who's built discipline doesn't need hype anymore. They need space. They need silence. They need mission. Look around. You'll see people chasing dopamine, living for the spike, the applause, the algorithm, bouncing from one burst of motivation to the next. But you're playing a longer game. You've learned to find joy in the reps, pride in the mundane, purpose in the unseen. You're not trying to get through the work. You are the work. You are the rhythm. You are the evidence. And every time you show up without needing a reason, you hardwire that truth deeper into your DNA. You don't become disciplined by reading about it. You become disciplined by living like it already belongs to you. Even when you fall short, even when it's messy, even when your mind says you're slipping. You look back at the blueprint and remember, you don't chase discipline. You return to it because this isn't a sprint. This is who you are now. You're not a project. You're a process. And a process doesn't panic. It recalibrates, it realigns, it resets without drama. You've outgrown the old story, the one that said you only perform when you feel like it. That story is over, because now you know you are what you repeat. You are what you reinforce. You are what you refuse to abandon, even when everything in you says stop. This is deeper than performance. This is identity engineering. This is the life you earn when you stop outsourcing discipline to mood. This is what it means to build your freedom from the inside out. No hacks, no hype, just truth, traction, and time. The most powerful version of you is not loud. It's not hyped. It's anchored. It wakes up with a quiet certainty. It doesn't need to declare, "I'm motivated today." It simply does what's required. And when that version of you becomes your default, everything changes. You no longer chase success. You live at the level that attracts it. You no longer fight distraction. You built a life that doesn't allow it. You no longer hope to become someone you already are. Them. And now you're just revealing it with every disciplined day. So this is your moment. not to feel something, to decide something, to decide that from this day forward, your identity is not optional. It is installed with routines that hold you, with standards that raise you, with rituals that refine you. This is your permission to close the gap between the vision in your head and the structure of your day, because that's where transformation lives, not in dreams, but in discipline, delivered daily. Let the world stay obsessed with emotion. Let them debate the best plan. Let them wait for the mood to strike. You move. You execute. You embody. And you do it without apology, without explanation, without needing the world to understand, because one day they won't need you to explain anything. They'll see it, they'll feel it, and they'll know. You didn't just change your habits, you changed yourself, because you became what you disciplined. And now, you don't go back, not because you can't, but because you won't. You've seen what it feels like to be in control, to show up, to stop negotiating, to walk in alignment with who you've always known you could be. You've burned the fallback plan, you've cut the exit route, and you've become the kind of person who keeps the promise even when no one is watching. So what happens now? Now, you lead. You lead your schedule. You lead your thoughts. You lead your mission. You lead your future. And you do it, with one decision repeated without hesitation, until the world has no choice but to call you what you've always known. You were disciplined, aligned, unstoppable. You become what you discipline. And today, you decided. Now show them what happens when structure becomes identity. You don't need another breakthrough. You need to follow through. You don't need to feel inspired. You need to do it anyway. The world will keep spinning in distraction, chasing motivation like a mirage, while the few, the focused, move in rhythm. Not because it's easy, but because they've made peace with the weight of repetition, with showing up when no one notices. With becoming so consistent, they forget what it's like to need permission. You've seen what's possible now. You've felt the weight of truth. And deep down, you already know what needs to change. So don't wait for the perfect plan. Don't wait for the mood. Don't wait to be asked. Just build. Show up. Move in silence, and let your discipline speak louder than your doubt ever could. Because you don't get what you want in life. You get what you repeat, and eventually, you become what you discipline.